Hello, I'm reviewing all of Elton John's studio albums and grading every track out of 10 to try to find his best album and to also compile a list of his 100 best tracks. Now, let me say first of all that some people have got in touch to say I'm being too strict in my marking of the tracks. Well, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to find out which are Elton's very best tracks. So if I give 9s and 10s through everything, it's going to be quite difficult to distinguish them. So some do get a lower mark, and that just means they're not quite as good as others, which I much prefer. And so as a rough guide, we might have sort of Your Song there, 10 out of 10. We might have something like I Am Your Robot or Solar Prestige right down there with a 1 or a 0. Everything else is fitting in between. So it's not that I'm being strict. I'm just trying to be consistent as we move from video to video. Today I'm looking at the first disc of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, an album that came out in 1973, Elton's 7th studio album. It followed Don't Shoot Me, which I reviewed last week, and it preceded Caribou. It's widely regarded as his best album, according to Wikipedia. Now, of course, we will take issue with that and see if the tracks actually stand up to it. It's also been described as Elton's magnum opus, perhaps his greatest collections of songs ever. Again, we'll see if that actually stands up to scrutiny. Strangely enough, he wrote most of the tracks for this album in just 3 days. What an incredibly creative time that must have been, and a great demonstration of the talent he was using to create these memorable tracks, which have stood the test of time. And here we are nearly 50 years later, still talking about them. Let's have a look at the album itself, and there's going to be a surprise here. Here's the cover of the album, obviously heavily influenced by the Wizard of Oz film. Elton stepping inside the picture as he follows the yellow brick road. Inside, I think, is one of Elton's very best gatefolds. Quality artwork, the lyrics presented very attractively, as we can see all throughout their picture of Marilyn Monroe. Every track is illustrated in some way, bringing new life to it and new meaning. And over on the back of this, we have some pictures of the band there, and the very back has a track listing. But now for the surprise, because my version has this wonderful yellow vinyl. Look at that. I didn't even know that was going to be in there when I bought this way back, but it's beautiful, and of course it plays really well. The album was actually recorded in France. It was supposed to be Jamaica, but various things happened there, making it impossible. And Elton picks up on that in the Jamaica Jerk-Off song. Rolling Stone have called this the 91st album in their 500 of the best albums of all time. And it's also included in that book of 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Now, there were 4 singles from it, some in the UK and the US, some in one or the other, and we'll examine those when we come on to each track. There's kind of a nostalgic feel to the whole thing, some childhood charm there, childhood culture, and that comes through in several of the tracks. The first track is Funeral for a Friend. This is a special track to me because when I first saw Elton in concert in the winter of 1982 in Birmingham in the United Kingdom, he opened his concert with this track. So the stage was sort of full of dry ice. The musicians started up and then Elton entered and sat down at the piano and started playing this. So I've always enjoyed this track with Love Lies Bleeding as well. Apparently Elton was in a kind of melancholic mood and was wondering what sort of music he'd like at his own funeral, and he started just improvising on the piano and came up with this, and I reckon this could possibly be his best ever instrumental. We're comparing it perhaps with Song for Guy and maybe Out of the Blue from the Blue Moves album, both of those really good as well, and The Man Who Never Died, it's quite a good one I seem to recall as well. But this starts off with a sort of synthesizer beginning. There's some little hints of other songs in there as well, possibly. And it has that overall feel of the graveyard to begin with. and then this strident piano comes in and some really exciting electric guitar. So in a way, it's a kind of classic rock number. And yet it's one of those that's a kind of a deep cut that only serious Elton fans might know. It's split into 3 distinct sections, and when they all come together at the end, the result is a really powerful and memorable track. I like this one a lot, and that's why I'm going to give it 8 marks out of 10. Now, it's been called a 2-part musical odyssey because the second track is Love Lies Bleeding. It links with Funeral for a Friend, mainly because they're both in the same key of A major. This is a driving rock number all about a relationship that has broken up. Although the words sound like a ballad, Elton gave it a really upbeat rock treatment. It's a kind of pile driving number that is pleasant to listen to, perhaps similar to the later track of Dear John on Jump Up, but it's the superior recording, I think. Very good piano introduction again. Elton's piano on this album sounds absolutely fantastic, and when we compare it with kind of the later sort of tinnier sound we heard in the 80s and 90s a little bit, this is just so much richer using a real grand piano. So like this one a lot. It doesn't mean much, it's not going to affect us much in that way, but it's a great listen, and we're going to give this one 7 out of 10. So pretty impressive start to this album. Now let's hear the piano introduction to this next track. Well, that was my attempt anyway, and I hope you could recognise there the opening chords of Candle in the Wind. This, of course, was Elton and Bernie's tribute to Marilyn Monroe, who died 11 years earlier. This has been described as one of the greatest recordings of all time. It ranks 347 out of 500 for Rolling Stone. Bernie Taupin has said that this is about somebody being cut short in the prime of their life. And it's certainly a lonely vocal of Elton on this one. The lyrics are so memorable, we probably don't even need to quote them here. It's a really powerful setting by Elton as well. Beautiful harmonies. The idea of the candle in the wind possibly came from an article Bernie Taupin had seen about Janis Joplin. And it was rewritten later, of course, in 1997 as a tribute to Princess Diana as Goodbye England's Rose. What can we say about this? A slight question we might ask is why one of the verses is half repeated in the third verse. So we get half of the lyrics again for that one. But that's just nitpicking because we know Elton and Bernie at the height of their powers here. It's a great song. Elton has played it so many times, and yet it's still fresh to listen to. Nice cover version by Ed Sheeran on one of the later covers albums, and that's certainly worth listening to. He gives it quite an interesting beat to that one. What can we say about it other than to say this is going to get 9 marks out of 10, which is putting it into our excellent category. Track 4 and closing side 1 is Benny and the Jets. This was a US single backed with harmony, and it's about a fictional band of which the narrator is a fan. Bernie Taupin has said that this is a satire on the music industry, its greed and its glitz, and the lead singer of this fictional band is Benny, a female. This sounds like nothing else that Elton has ever produced, and it's one of those songs that perhaps you either love or you hate. For me, it's not a favourite. I acknowledge that it's a significant song for Elton. It's very good in live versions when you have the call and response. For me, it's not something that I would choose to listen to that much. But it's an interesting setting. They decided to put some clapping and some crowd sounds onto it as well, including whistles and shouts. That gives it that feel of being recorded live, even though it actually wasn't. What are we going to give for this one? Well, I'm going to give it 6 out of 10, not because it's a bad track, because it's just not one I particularly like. There's an interesting cover version on the Revamp album, which Elton did with Pink and Logic. That adds something to it, actually. I would recommend you listening to that one. That's the end of side 1. We've got 8, 7, 9 and 6, giving us a total of 30 from only 4 tracks. That's a pretty impressive side of vinyl. Side 2 opens with this track. See if you recognise the introduction. Yes, track 5 on this album is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. This chimes in with the idea of The Wizard of Oz. There's been lots of discussion about what this track's about. And I made a bit of a discovery recently when I was researching for this video, that there's this theme that this might be Bernie Taupin talking about somebody who goes to the big city seeking a change in life, finds themselves there exploited, possibly sexually, by some sort of sugar daddy figure. They realise they've made a mistake and they yearn to go back to their roots. Listen to this. You know you can't hold me forever. I didn't sign up with you. I'm not a present for your friends to open. This boy's too young to be singing the blues. There have been some other theories about it, that it's to do with Jesus and Satan. We don't know about that. But it certainly seems like the city streets appeared to be paved with gold, and now there's a rejection of those. This is a fantastic setting. The piano sounds wonderful on this. The orchestral backing is great. It's been described as one of the 500 top songs of all time again, this time at 390. There's a beautiful blend of voices on this. Elton managing with these big gaps in the melody, big vocal range on this needed, yet he pulls it off and it sounds natural. And if you sit down at the piano and you can play and sing, this is a great one to sing yourself. It kind of defines the era almost, this one. This is a song of the 70s, yet it stood that test of time. There's been some good cover versions of this as well. Queen of the Stone Age do it on the Revamp album. There's an artist called Sarah Burrell, if I pronounce that right, who did a very good cover of this on YouTube. And there's also been a reworking of the mix on this, again, which I'll link below, in which Elton's voice is reduced to a 1-track voice rather than a 2-track voice. And I actually like this version very much. It's using all the original recordings, just a slightly different mix. What can you say about a track like this that's gone down in history, other than to give, and this is very rare for me, I've only done this once before, but this time this track gets a full 10 out of 10. Track 6 on the album is called This Song Has No Title, which of course it does, because it's called This Song Has No Title. This is a story of a writer who wants to experience everything in life, but knows there are limitations. For instance, it starts, if I was an artist, ... Lots of interesting musings on this. And it's all to do with the meaning of life. Elton is very active on this one, playing piano, electric piano, and something called a farfisa organ. It starts strongly. The verse is very impressive, piano and vocal working well together. The problem with this is when we get to the refrain, the melody setting is less impressive. It's far too intricate. There's a lot of chord changes in that, which are a little uneven and a little bit difficult to listen to, which is a pity, actually, after such a promising verse. So this one, we're going to give a 5 out of 10. Track 7 is Grey Seal. Now, I've spent about 40 years listening to this track and thinking it was actually about a seal, but of course that is a metaphor for something else. What is Bernie Taupin writing about here? Well, is the Grey Seal his school teacher who he resented? He resented people telling him what to think. How does it feel to be so wise? There's some anger in here, isn't there, with authority figures? Although Bernie Taupin has said that he doesn't necessarily know what it all means. This was the B-side of a 1970 single, Rock and Roll Madonna, but has been reworked here. The introduction appears to be a little bit like Pinball Wizard, some exciting keyboards going on there. And there's a kind of 1960s feel to the verse here. It's an up-tempo ballad, an effective rock number, and I can imagine it would be very impressive live. If you're listening to this, please hang on to the end because the fade out is really exciting. Some great work going on there. It really rocks Elton getting carried away on the piano. So we enjoyed this track. It's a little bit puzzling, but we're going to give it 7 out of 10. Track 8 is Jamaica Jerk Off, and this may have been written because of their anger at what happened in Jamaica and the fact that they were all ready to record the album but couldn't do it for various reasons that were going on the island, some political unrest. Now, we won't dwell on what jerk off means, but it's obviously not complimentary towards the island of Jamaica. This seemingly meaningless song does have a good hook in it. We enjoy the refrain on this. It's a calypso style. It evokes the idea of Jamaica being a carefree island where everybody would spend all their time dancing. It's a little bit of a caricature, isn't it? Elizabeth Rosenthal, in her book on Elton, calls it a festive, sunny romp. And we wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, as it's quite an engaging tune. However, the whole thing's a bit crude, it's a bit simplistic. We obviously would compare it with Island Girl, which is not one of my favourites either. So this one, a bit of an album filler, this one, I think we'll call it a 4. So track 9 and the conclusion of this first disc of music is I've Seen That Movie Too. This is a panoramic ballad with a big tribute there to cinema history and cinema drama. A relationship goes sour because of infidelity. It's chilling, emotive music with a brilliant vocal from Elton on this. In amongst it, in the middle, we have a great guitar solo as well. The guitar almost seems to be crying at this stage over the breakdown of this relationship. Listen too for Elton's piano, which just sounds fantastic in this, really classy. And listen to some of those lyrics from Bernie. Keep your auditions for somebody who hasn't got so much to lose. It's a really smooth lyric. It works so well in tandem with the music. Everything coming together for a bitter and emotional song, which brings out that feeling of broken love and jealousy. So a great way to close the second side of this album. We're going to give this a solid 8 out of 10, which remember is a very good mark from me. So let's have a look at the marks for the second side of that vinyl. We've got a 10, 5, 7, 4 and 8, giving us a total of 34. That's a great side of vinyl. Pity about Jamaica Jerk Off. If we'd had another track in there, maybe just pushing that up just slightly more, you'd have total class all the way through. So I'd be interested in your ideas as well on your favourite track and your least favourite track on this album. What's the strongest? What's the weakest on this particular disc of music? Remember, next time I'm going to be looking at the second record. But now let's see how those tracks fit into the 100 or so others that I've reviewed so far. So I've looked at about 8 albums now, and the top of the league there, only 2 tracks so far have been awarded 10 out of 10. Skyline Pigeon, which was an extra track on Don't Shoot Me, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. But some solid quality there with 9s. And Goodbye Yellow Brick Road contributing Candle in the Wind further down there as well. So some really good tracks emerging at the very top of my league. And then at the bottom of the league table there, nothing from Candle in the Wind at all there. We've still got Tower of Babel, I Am Your Robot and Heart in the Right Place. The lowest ranked tracks so far, all of those just getting 1 out of 10. These are my album rankings so far. Remember, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road won't be here yet because I've still got to look at the second disc, and I will put that on here when we've got a proper average for every track. But so far, Don't Shoot Me is coming out as the best ranked album. That's 6.7 per track. That's the average per track on there. And Jump Up at the moment is at the bottom of the league with 4.5. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to be updated with all my new videos on the Elton John album list. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for all your comments which are coming in. I'm trying to respond to all of them, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, we're still standing.